So I don't know how well my voice is going to hold up this week because with the record-breaking heat waves and everything, apparently seasonal allergies are making a big comeback. I almost feel like I'm back in. I almost feel like I'm back in March and April all over again with the sinus problems. So I'm going to try to do the best I can with this. And if my voice holds up great, if I sound kind of squeaky, well, my apologies. I did elevate the microphone up a little bit. I don't normally like looking at my older videos, and I don't normally like, hearing the sound of my own voice. But I was noticing that the sound wasn't. I don't have, of course, a fancy recording studio here to make a radio sounded broadcast, but I didn't really like the quality of sound in some of the ones that I had looked at recently, and I said, I'm going to try to see if I can improve it, because this is kind of an expensive microphone. But I didn't actually have a pre-planned topic for this week when I started. I had a couple of generalized ideas. One involving something in postmodernism called a simulacrum, and I'll get to that in a moment. But there has been a couple of new comments from people that are trying to explain to me once again for the 100th time, even though I've already done a video about this, and even though I've done multiple videos attacking the literature of Alcoholics Anonymous, that the meetings are not the program, and the program is this wonderful thing that was beamed down from the heavens above by the AA God, the higher power, who designated Bill and Bob to turn it into this thing that, became worldwide and has saved millions of people, and the first 100 people were just, true miracles, Jesus and his 12 fucking apostles here. But I've done videos on that before, so I'm not going to do another one on it. The fact that AA was started by a couple of guys who were members of the Oxford group, and the Oxford group praised Adolf Hitler as being God's gift to the world to stop communism. And the founder of the Oxford group said his dream was to see a world where a worldwide dictatorship, he didn't say democracy, he said dictatorship of men who were controlled by God were running the whole entire thing. Something tells me that an entire world run by a bunch of fucking assholes that are like those guys you see in AA would not be a very viable or workable world. But I could also say that I think we can rest easy in the comfort that that's not going to happen, because for an entire world to be dominated by a group of those idiot assholes that make up those AA meetings, they're not intelligent enough to actually do anything. Although, when you do see some of the idiots today in the political arena, it does make you kind of wonder about this kind of thing. But without getting sidetracked on that kind of thing, the main, like I said, attack, and it kind of leads back to what I was going to talk about with a simulacrum. I have to say that 2 or 3 times so I can remember how to pronounce it. But it's this idea that there was this wonderful golden AA that existed at one time, this golden age of AA, where everybody miraculously came in and got sober by the first 164 pages of the big book. And I do think it's kind of comical that people would actually come to a channel of mine and think that that's going to carry any weight with me, because I've attacked the literature around here numerous times. I'm going to keep attacking the literature around here. This is not going to be a literature video, because I don't actually have a book open in front of me to do it. I don't open a book. I wouldn't buy one of their books. Got my subscriber comment on hand, but what I was one thing that I was also getting some traction on this week, and I meant to actually delete the comment. I mean, not delete the comment. See, there I go again with a Freudian slip. But I meant to publish the comment, and I hit the wrong thing. I hit the trash can and deleted it. It was a Freudian finger. It wasn't a Freudian slip. It was a Freudian finger. I subconsciously wanted to delete it because I knew it was bullshit. But I accidentally, trying to publish it, I deleted it. But anyway, it was somebody saying there's nothing that's being said on these horrible videos other than one man's lousy opinion. And I missed the golden age when people didn't talk out of turn, and intelligent people were allowed to dominate the narrative of the conversation, or some shit like that. And I was thinking, what you really mean is you missed the golden age when everybody who just agreed with you was allowed to talk. It's kind of like the people I've seen that say they were all about free speech, but it's very obvious they're only about one group of people having the right to speak. Everybody else, they don't want to hear that shit. Shut them the fuck up. You shouldn't be allowed to talk, and kind of like AA. Anyway, the first thing I was going to kind of touch on is the idea that you can come at me for calling out AA as being a religion and attacking the literature in the book, which is contradictory in nature, which can't logically be true, and for attacking it as being the superstitious cult religion that it is, as being a mere opinion. kind of explains to me that a lot of the people in AA, because they're so used to hearing grand sweeping statements that the big book makes, which it makes these statements as fact. You know, it'll make a sentence and declare that the sentence is a fact as though it's scientifically sound, that it's scientifically valid, that it's set in stone, cannot be argued with, disagreed with, or questioned, or anything at all. That for me to disagree with it is just me merely stating an opinion. If I told you that I could step off this roof and I could fly, and you said to me, well, let me see you do it, and I said, well, I'm not going to show you, but God gave me the ability to fly. I can step off this roof right now and fly. And you said, well, I think you're being dishonest. I don't think you can really fly. And I said, well, that's just your fucking opinion, so you're narrow-minded, you know, and all that other kind of thing. That's kind of how illogical that entire thing is. An opinion piece is literally, an opinion is when you say, you know, this type of music, to me, that's the best music there is. If I told you the 90s grunge music was some of the best music ever put out in any decade in rock history, and somebody said to me, well, that's just your opinion, that is correct. It is just my opinion. Now, if I said, no, it's a fact, it's been established as a fact, and everybody knows it's a fact, and for you to say that just means you have an opinion about it, that's me being a fucking asshole trying to claim something that I cannot possibly prove. That's like the people that actually say that nobody ever got sober without a spiritual experience. You're making a claim that you know cannot be proven, that you know cannot be put under a microscope, that you know cannot be examined and looked at in any kind of way other than a bunch of meaningless assertions. You're stating it as a fact, and when I'm saying you can't prove to me that God removed your desire to drink, and you can't prove to me that you did a step forward and all of a sudden some higher power beamed some mystical power over you where you no longer have a craving for alcohol, that's an unproven assertion, and I can call it for what I think it is, which is utter nonsense. That's not actually an opinion. It's not an opinion when several legal court cases involving sentencing people to the cult religion of Quackaholics Anonymous have ruled that it is a religion. And we're not talking about, you know, one particular judge who just didn't like Alcoholics Anonymous, that had a resentment against it and said, nah, I don't like this. This is going to be made a religion now. That's not how the law is actually supposed to work in court proceedings. I'm not going to get started on a whole bunch of legalese here, but it was ruled to be a religion in several prominent court cases where it's unconstitutional to send people to AA meetings. That's not an opinion piece. That's an actual fact. It's an actual fact that AA has a very horrible, abysmal rate of success, and only a tiny little minority of people stay in it with any complete longevity for a long haul or a long term. You can find that on an anecdotal observation alone. Just go to any AA meeting and look around. 90% of the population of an AA meeting is treatment center people, drug court people, people who are like I was at one point when I wasn't court ordered into AA, people who were just in and out relapsing, or a bunch of new people that like maybe have the 1 to 2 year medallion thing that will disappear in a very short period of time. And you have the tiny little hegemony of the old timers that run the entire thing. That's observable. That's observable to anybody who's ever been in any AA meetings for any extended period of time. It's a very transitional society. It's a very transitional society that fills up with new people one week and then will be completely gone with all those people the next week, and then we'll entirely have new faces the week afterward. That's not an opinion piece. It's not an opinion piece to point out all the illogical assertions that the Big Book states as absolute fact and calling it for what it is, which is utter nonsense. You can't prove to me that people who don't get sober through the AA program are just constitutionally incapable of being honest. You can't prove to me that the people who don't get sober through the AA program are just people who left out that one sentence on their fourth step, when they stole that cookie in the school cafeteria, and they never talked about it, and that's why they can't stop drinking. Those are absurd claims, and absurd claims need to be called out for what they are and examined and looked at, and you see that under close scrutiny, they don't hold up to anything. It's a fact that the blatant abuse goes on in those rooms. Check out the 13-step documentary. Check out AA horror stories. There's like 3 volumes of book on it. Check out the personal testimony of all the people that are not just on this channel but are online and in every other place that talk about all the nefarious practices that go on in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. No, this is not me just spewing an opinion. If I was spewing an opinion, I would say something along the line of, well, out of all the mob movies they ever made, I actually prefer Donnie Brasco over The Godfather. Okay, that's an opinion. If I said Donnie Brasco is superior to The Godfather as a fact, then that just makes me a fucking fool that doesn't know how to properly, coherently articulate an opinion. But to get that part out of the way, what I was actually kind of was floating around in my mind here, and it's kind of what I want to talk about with some of these comments about how wonderful AA used to be before it was corrupted by a bunch of non-alcoholics and mentally ill people. But I do want to throw in one little example before I continue. I had a sponsor who was a piece of shit. He was the last sponsor I had, and there's no polite way to put that, by the way. Okay, there's absolutely no polite way to say it. He didn't have one single fucking redeeming quality about him whatsoever. He had cheated an entire family out of their inheritance by getting this senile aunt to sign over their will and testament to him, and then he made promises to kids who he never had seen his entire life that he would give some of that inheritance to them, and he never did. He kept it all. He bought a fancy sports car, and he bought a motorcycle. I lived in a garage behind him, and he rode around at AA meetings and talked about how he used to be a member of a notorious motorcycle club, and he was their head guy. But then he would tell stories about being a homeless guy on the streets. Now, I'm getting to a point with this by saying he admitted to me one time, and you could almost tell he realized he had fucked up. He admitted to me in a conversation that his primary thing that he did for years was heroin. And I said, but you're always talking about people behind their back. You're always saying, that guy's not an alcoholic. He's just mentally ill. Which is an incredibly dismissive, degrading way to talk about someone with a mental illness, I might add, even though you don't have a fucking psychiatric degree to talk like that. Or he would say they're just a drug addict. And I pointed out to him one time, but you said you were on heroin most of your little career there. So aren't you a drug addict? No, I'm not a drug addict. You see, people who think I'm a drug addict, they're ignorant and ill-informed. I think it's rich that an asshole like that could call people ignorant and ill-informed. But he said, I medicated my alcoholism. See, I wasn't a drug addict. I just medicated my alcoholism. And I thought, so you're just a master at semantics and twisting things and changing words around to, they don't mean what you really think they mean kind of thing. So it's really useless to debate these stupid fucking AA people in any kind of way when it comes to logic or when it comes to reason or anything like that, because they'll just redefine terminology. They'll lie, they're dishonest and everything else. But simulacrum is what I was going to, oh God, I hope I said that right. I've already forgotten what I said at the beginning of this thing. It's a fancy way of saying simulation. And this is what I was going to get to when I first started this thing before I read a subscriber comment here. I don't want to go down the entire philosophical postmodern rabbit hole with you guys in this meeting. In this meeting, did I say that? Holy fucking shit! Strike that. God, may God strike me dead for saying that. Meeting. I can't believe I said that. Anyway, I don't want to go down the postmodernist rabbit hole with you guys, but there was one of the postmodern philosophers named Jean Baudrillard. I think I'm saying that right. My French is not so good. You know, freaking Italian from the Northeast. I'm not, I'm not culturally linguist. I'm not a cultural linguist when it comes to pronouncing more exotic terms or names or anything like that, especially in the French language. But he was talking about a simulacrum, which is actually just a fancy way of saying simulation. But he was talking about how in culture, and I think this is something that applies to AA, and this is what I was originally kind of floating around in my head when I was going to start this video off, is that certain things in the world have been copied over and over and over again, especially in mass-produced culture. I think he would have had a field day if he could have lived to have seen Twitter and Facebook and all that other kind of thing, to where he was saying that reality and culture are almost so intermingled together that actual reality gets obscured because we take all our cues as to what reality is from culture. Now, and that's without trying to make it any more complicated than it really is. I'm going to say this, for example. If I told you, if I gave you some pens and some pencils and some papers and some crayons, and I said, draw me a picture of a princess, you would probably draw something like what you've seen in the latest Disney movies. It's not an accurate representation of what a princess really would have been, say, during the Middle Ages or during the medieval periods, but that would be your first that would be the first image that would come to your mind through media and through maybe fantasy stories you read as a child. That would be what you would draw. You would draw something like that fantasy representation. It's not necessarily representative of the reality, but it's representative of your reality, your interpretation of reality through all the cultural images you've gotten throughout your life. Like, for example, well, a very good point. If I said to you, talk about the La Cosa Nostra, talk about the mafia, you might say something that you remember from Donnie Brasco or The Godfather or The Sopranos. You might remember something from Goodfellas or something like that. Not necessarily an accurate representation of the mafia, maybe. Maybe the mafia is nothing like that in real life, but that's what you would picture it as being after a lifetime of cultural assimilation through movies and pop culture that dictates everything. And the point I was leading up to in all of this, because I really don't want to go down the philosophical rabbit hole with you guys, because this would turn into an all-day video. If I did, we'd still be sitting here tonight when darkness came. And if you had a reference to some TV science fiction movie, when I said that, that's a perfect example of a forget it. You know the word. I said it earlier. But anyway, AA is kind of is like that to me, especially in the comments I get from these AA true believers and these AA people that have this idea. They have this idealized, romanticized notion of what AA is, and then there's the reality of AA. The idealized, romanticized notion of AA is this group of people, all somber and serious and somewhat humorous, but loving and kind and compassionate and caring, trying to help people overcome their addictions and their drinking problems. But the reality of the situation is something completely, totally different. It would have made for a better, interesting observation when I was doing the video about what pop culture gets wrong about AA. But these people that are talking about in the comments to me about how when the Big Book came out, it was all perfect and everything like that, they're probably more than likely referencing that movie with James Woods and James Garner playing Bill and Bob. And they have this romanticized idea that that's what it was like. And if you only look at AA history through the lens that AA allows you to look at it through, and you don't look at it through the entire spectrum of all the available evidence that's out there of how it came to be and what it is today, you'll see that there was never a golden age. You'll see that it was always a cult religion. You'll see that it was always full of unscrupulous people, including its founder, Bill W., who gets this credit as being this saintly kind of dude that was directed by a spirit of the universe to write this fucking literature that is full of nothing but religious assertions, and that is not opinion, by the way. That's fact. It's fact. When I tell you, when I hear in a meeting, the phone messed me up. When you hear in a meeting that all alcoholics are selfish and self-centered, and that's the root of their problems, and let me mute that phone. I actually got up in the middle of the video here. I wasn't going to cut it off and do it all over again, so let's call this a Zoom meeting. I done made it too far to start all over again. I always do these in one take anyway. When I tell you that all alcoholics are selfish and self-centered, and that's the root of all their problems, and I state that as a fact, and I say, well, can you show me some kind of scientific correlation or some kind of evidence that proves that that's the case? And you say, well, it's just your shitty opinion that that's not true or not. You can kind of see how these people have no fundamental grasp as to how actual logic and reason works. Anyway, I'm going to kind of round it out with a subscriber comment here because I think it kind of sums up what I was getting at. There's this idealized, romanticized notion of what AA is, and the reality of the situation of what AA is completely different. It's actually just a cult religion full of toxic, miserable, bullying people that prey on innocent people that are honestly seeking help for their addictions. Sorry for the little video interruption with the phone and everything. I always try to turn those landlines off. I don't personally own the landline. My landlord has one, and I've just never... He pays the bill for it in case he has an emergency situation and needs to come here and use a phone. He's a little bit of a hypochondriac about that kind of thing. But anyway, I'm not paying for it, so why do I care? I pay my internet bill, and I pay the electric bill, and I pay I pay for everything else here, but I don't pay for that fucking phone that interrupted this video. But anyway, this subscriber says it's a self-diagnosed disease unless a lecherous criminal pervert who has sat in a church basement for decades decides you aren't a real alcoholic. There are no rules, just suggestions, but if you don't abide by all these suggestions, you're going to result in drinking, suffering, death, and jails and institutions. They say it's a simple program for complicated people, but if you drink, they'll say you didn't put in the work. Work meaning sitting in church basements, listening to the same old rehashed religious writings of the Oxford group, writing out all these phony moral inventories because all these diseases have a conscience and are faith-based and are punishment by God for not doing His will. I do love this particular, I mean, I like all my subscribers and all my commenters, but I do like the way they so saliently sum it all up, you know. Let's see. Calling some unhinged, uneducated parakeet loser who can repeat the big book over and over again to talk about moral shortcomings while abstaining from alcohol and drugs is their definition of spirituality. If you have addiction problems, you can do really well by abstaining from alcohol and drugs and getting some professional help. But if you're prescribed medication by a professional to address a medical condition, you aren't really sober. NAA will say you will drink, suffer, and die, jails, institutions, and death. Anytime you mention the 5% success rate, they adamantly defend the cult success rate by boldly proclaiming it has helped millions upon millions. Once you stop going to cult services, you're considered dead to the cult. Even though they say they're just there to help the alcoholic who still suffers. You're probably drinking or getting ready to die is all they will say, and they will dismiss you. Meanwhile, most of these people are just uneducated frauds and tricksters and hucksters who are ripping off government assistance, have extensive criminal backgrounds, and continuously lie about their sober time. And the subscriber goes by the handle of Total Swabby, and I got to say, you sum it up every single time you comment on one of my videos, just totally better than I could in these 21, 22-minute videos that I do where phones interrupt and start ringing and I have to get up and hide them. Anyway, I think I pretty much covered everything, but Simulacrum, I might post a link to it in the video description. You can kind of get a lecture on it if you're interested in that sort of thing. But it's the idea that cultural references are dictating our reality to the point that we don't really know what, that reality actually has become almost a personalized thing. Now, before somebody jumps in, I got to throw this in there before I go. People will say, well, if you believe that, then you should be able to step off a building and fly. You know, you should be able to blow your brains out. It won't hurt you. You know, you should be able to, you know, gravity doesn't exist and all that. The idea of a simulacrum or anything in postmodern philosophy never had anything to do with defying scientific law. It never had to do with being able to float above the ceiling and into the sky. It had to do with the fact that reality, as we know it, is often dictated by culture, just like the church dictated what reality was through culture throughout the Middle Ages after the fall of the Roman Empire. And, you know, during the years of rationalism and the Renaissance, it was more of a scientific-based cultural narrative. That's all that's about. It's not about defying physical reality. Anyway, until next time, chime in the comments. Let me know your experiences with these people that think the AA book is divinely inspired. It's just the meetings that are the problem. Until next time.